we've got another lap guide video today in the iRacing Formula iR-04. We are at Road America. Let's get into the hot lap. Okay, so we're going down the main straight at Road America into turn one. Going to be a good overtaking opportunity. There's going to be lots of easy overtaking opportunities for everybody in the week here. The toe is going to be massive, so going to be pretty tricky to get away from the guys behind. So yeah, going to be an interesting race for sure. Into turn one, they like to use these cones, which they're pretty useful. I mean, they're a lot closer to the track than the boards on the left, so it's nice to have them. Braking for turn one, you're going to be going down from 6th gear to 4th for what is like a high, medium speed corner. It's a bit of a tricky one because it's not a corner where I'd say really focus on your exit, really focus on the speed you carry in, really focus on pushing the brakes. It's just a mix of all of them. It's 90 degrees. There's nothing crazy with this corner. You just got to do it well-ish, if you know what I mean. So, nothing too complicated here. Your braking references just after that second last set of cones, the 3 cones there, and before the last cone on the left. Braking a straight line, pretty standard with this car. You have really high efficient braking performance in a straight line, and then you've got to bleed off as you turn in, otherwise we lose a lot of front grip on the entry phase. Down to 4th gear, use a lot of this inside curb. It will really hook the car around the corner, so pretty much any car you're in, especially a car like this, hook the car on the inside curb. So that's your first reference. Really get into the inside there. And once you're on this curb, you should be able to pick up the throttle. It'll just help turn this car around really nicely. And you can pick up the throttle really aggressively after that. You push yourself out. I don't think you need to be out fully on this curb. And the reason why I say that is because quite often, as I mentioned before in this car, if you've got a ton lock on, it does kind of scrub speed a bit. So to be out that wide, it's not necessarily that being out all the way on this exit curve is a problem. Like, you're not going to get off track, you're not going to lose grip per se. It's just to do that, you're probably putting a lot of load into the front. And also, it's difficult to get back, I find, in time before you reach the dirt on the left here and usually getting off track. So you can try it, and there's a little bit of margin there, but certainly keep in mind, I like just running, here or maybe half a tyre width further to the left. Okay, so this is another 4th gear corner coming up here, turn 2. Braking references, often quite tricky here. You have got these boards on the left, but they're not obvious. We have got these really nice little white lines, though, that they put on the track for us. So my reference is kind of almost like, I'm looking here, but it's after you pass this first white line here on the left. So keeping that in mind, just between those two markers, and you've got the one board on the left as well. That's fairly useful. I would say important to keep in mind here. I don't like going all the way to the left-hand side of the track, because you can see the track's actually going to the right down this straight. So keep that in mind in the braking. If we just brake straight now, we're going to end up on the grass, which is not really ideal. So, but I don't really want to be going all the way to the left and then driving back right either. It's not to that extent. I think it's that important. So you can see here, I'm kind of facing the car just, we want to be kind of in line with here, which is where I'm turning in from. Okay, this kind of bit where the road jags to the right of it after this reference white line in front of us here. Another fourth gear corner, very similar technique to the first corner. Heavy brake in a straight line down to fourth. As soon as you start rolling into the corner, you've got to start bleeding out of the brake. Use the inside curb, not as nice as T1, but still want to be on it generally. Quick throttle pickup, and this one's really important. Exactly what I said about turn one and using the exit curb there, and how the car pushes on throttle as well. Very similar. This curve's a little bit wider, but I found every single time I was pushing out onto this exit curb, I was always getting an off track that's really sensitive on this grass. If you just clip this dirt patch up here, you will get an off track. And to try and avoid it, you just kill so much speed, or it's barely possible when you end up fully out on the curb. Some cars can do it. With the iR-04, I found it's not really doable, so you can try it, but keep that in mind. You should probably only be running out to about this wide. So now we've got a really long run down to the hairpin. I like to keep the car on the right-hand side of the road just to shorten the distance up a little bit, and then just keep it straight so we're not got any inputs on the steering wheel. And it's another corner where we don't really want to be in line with the right-hand side of the track where the white line is here, because the white line's pointing in there, but you can use a lot of track limits on the right here without really getting punished. So I'll show you in a second, but when under brakes, we actually want to be pointing outwards towards these advertising boards over here, more in line with the wall on the right. It's a lot better of a reference for what you want to be parallel with. This might take some practice to get used to if you haven't been doing it before, but basically where this gravel trap or bit of sand on the right ends, we can run straight out towards the runoff area on the right. Down to third gear for this corner. You can see there, as long as you have your left wheels on the white line here, you'll be okay for track limits. You can see aiming out towards this yellow marker, this yellow boards here. There's a good marker, good reference to look for. Braking for me is always at this end of this dirt on the right where the true board is. Again, a really heavy brake. Do not get sucked into turning in too early. You will lose a lot of braking performance. You'll lock up. Either you'll get rear instability and slide into the corner, or you'll just start turning, the fronts will lock, and you'll just go straight. So really important here to be disciplined and keep the car straight, despite your brain kind of going, I want to turn in. You've got to keep it straight, and also you might not be able to hit quite as much pressure as you think just because it's downhill, so we're going to have a little bit less grip as the car is kind of unloaded. So just keep those two things in mind. So yeah, I like third gear here. You can do it in second, but in this car, much more stable in third, and you end up carrying more speed. I think it's definitely the way to go about driving this corner. Okay, so through in third, nice early throttle pickup. Use all this inside curb, really nice curb. You can actually run out on the right here. If you find that you've overpushed the entry a little bit, there's no issue with running out onto this runoff area on the right. As long as you get back before the gravel, you will not get off track. So that's completely fine. But what I will say that's a little bit unique with this car is usually I would just stay on, like, be really on the limit using all of this wide curb here. But there's a bump. There's a bump right here. You can't see it, but you can definitely feel it in this car when you go over it, and that stalls the car a little bit. It's a bit like if you remember the Fuji exit curb at turn one. In most cars, you really abuse it. In this car, I don't think it's worth doing as much because there's just a bump that stalls the car, and this car's really sensitive to that. It's low powered, it's really low. So just keep that in mind. I prefer to kind of turn off a little bit early. If you're going to run wide, run off onto this area here, please. And don't be try to get it over to the left a little bit early, just because it will help your exit a tiny bit. Okay, so in fourth gear now for this blind left, a bit of a tricky corner, not much in the way of references. You've got obviously the shadow of the bridge, which is a terrible reference because that's going to change based on the time of day. So please keep that in mind. But generally, you just got to judge your distance, and it's going to take a bit of practice here. You've got the wall on the right. Okay, so you've got your best reference if you're really keen having an exact braking markers. I would use one of these indentations on the barrier on the right and where it changes. My reference really is I'm always thinking I'm braking before the bridge. I'm looking there. I want to slow the car down, probably slightly on the early side, and kind of deal with it that way. But yeah, it's a third gear corner, down one gear from fourth. The car will get a little bit light over this crest. So the other thing I would say is you got to delay your turn in here. If you turn in really early, the car will be really unstable. So you just got to brake, just stay straight for a fraction for car length, and then just wait a second before you turn. This is pretty on the edge here. If you turn in any earlier, the rear gets really upset. So just keep that in mind. But it's a corner where I think most things are done early. You know, it's difficult because you can't, like I said, you got to wait a little bit before you can really rotate the car. We want to get the braking done early, get the car settled over the crest. Early throttle pick up because the exit here is really important as the next corner is easily flat out. Nice early throttle pick up. And I find, again, most cars I would be using this exit curb. In this car, you can use it, but I'm not sure it's worth the gain. You know, once again, you have a lot of scrub. You risk an off track here. And there's also a bump right here on the curb that slightly stalls the car. So I've been liking to actually just run my right wheels on the curb. So let's keep that in mind. Okay, so just widening the track off here. It's all flat out, should be easily flat. I'm not hitting the inside curb. Once again, there's a little bit of a bump, so I just think it's a little bit better not to take it. And the outside curb just running on. Don't need to be all over it. No reason to take the extra distance in this car. And then down the hill in fifth gear into a third gear corner. Big thing here, very similar to the previous downhill braking zone we have on the track. Keep the car straight before you turn in, and also you can't quite brake as late as you think. So with that in mind, I just think, okay, I can brake really hard, really efficient, in a straight line. Braking reference is just before this white line here. And you turn in kind of off the end of this curb. But I like getting into this slightly cambered inside curb. Some cars get upset by it. It might kick in TC and certain GT cars and things like that if you go on throttle. But I think it hooks it up really nicely, especially in this car. You can be quite aggressive with the throttle. Once again, I wouldn't say use all the curb. Just go nicely out here, although it's not really as big of an issue as some of the other exit curbs we talked about earlier. So happy to use the curb there. It doesn't have to be too aggressive. Now just making sure, really important, let's not be lazy. Let's get over to the left-hand side of the track, open up this super, super long right-hand corner. Over to the white line on the left. This service road is a fantastic reference for where you want to start turning in this car. So please use that to judge, you know, whether you want to turn in a bit later, a bit earlier, kind of where you are roughly with that. And other things really important here, do not look here. Do not look to meet the white line here. Please look a long way around this corner. You don't want to be tight too early. It really tightens up the middle of the corner in this car, and even though you'll still have a lot of throttle on, it's only really a bit of a lift in this corner, in this car, but you really don't want to do it because it just tightens up the corner and you get a ton of scrub on the front. So please keep that in mind. So you can see I'm turning in flat out, only doing a part lift about halfway through the corner. It's not going to be exact with this corner. It's not one of these corners where it's like, brake here, turn here. You know, for me, it's a case of once you should feel through the wheel, you should feel the front tire starting to lose grip a bit. That's when you're just going to bleed out. In this car, don't have the front tire right on the edge sliding and stuff like that. Just stay a little bit under it. It really helps carry the speed if you're not really, again, abusing the front tire. It doesn't deal very well with this kind of combined load when you're on the throttle and you're turning at the same time. So if we can just be a little bit under the limit, you can see I don't have that much steering lock on. Like in some other cars, I might put more steering lock on, lift more aggressively, get more rotation. In this car, let's just try and maintain this kind of level of steering lock, which isn't very high, but just lift out a little bit as soon as you feel like you can't stay near the inside. Okay, and that's why you can see I try to meet near the inside white line in the middle of the corner. But the main thing is always at this corner, you want to meet the white line just before this curb is generally your best reference. And you should be full throttle. Ideally as early as possible without having, again, yanking a ton of lock on and keeping that distance short at the end. I don't like really abusing that exit curb too much either in this car. Again, don't use the entry curb here. Don't use the inside curb. I think it's just unnecessary. Smooth the wheel on the exit through a section. Just keep the car nice and straight. Reduce the distance on the left. Again, really smooth the steering and get the car in line with the white line on the left here. The amount of times I see people, because there's a bit of a kink here, just move over to the right a bit or not be fully straight early. Just please be straight early. We've got plenty of time to do it. Just make sure to do it, especially in high-powered cars. Worth a lot of time on this braking zone. Okay, and braking, your reference marker is between the 3 and the 2 board here on the left. A bit tricky, I always find. The corner looks further away than it is, and it's very easy to overrun the braking zone. Once again, really hard hit of the brake. Okay, really hard hit of the brake in a straight line. Let's do all that braking down to third gear in a straight line, and then bleed off really quickly as soon as we start turning into the corner. Early throttle pickup, exit is quite important here, even though there's a heavy braking zone before. But just because the uphill run and the fact that the next left-hander is fairly easy flat in this car. So yeah, just think on pushing your exit here quite a bit. Full throttle, use all this curb is fine. Open up this next left-hander, go away to the right, smooth with the steering, not too much of the inside of the exit curb. Get over to the left-hand side of the track, nice and early, and this is really important with the angles of this corner. If you're pointing over to the right too late, it makes a huge difference. It's in every car always at Road America. Get over to the left as early as possible and stay in line with that white line as much as you can, okay? We're carrying lots of minimum speed. I like third. It'll be close to the limit on third, but it really helps to pull up the hill. You can try fourth. I just feel like it understeers a bit too much. So try third, like a late downshift to third, and early throttle pickup. Use all the exit curb here if you can. Really smooth curb. And then just let yourself run up the hill and take a breath. And that's a lap at Road America. That takes us to the end of the video. Thanks for watching. If you've got any questions, please leave them in the comment section below. You can also check out the Coach Dave Academy Discord in the video description. See you next week.